All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. This is Bilal Zaidi, and we've got Jack Butcher in the place and Trung Phan, me Master Flex. What's going on, boys? It's NFT NYC week. It's been a special week. We had Jack Butcher in the place. We got to hang out, do some crazy stuff for his NFT life. Jack, how's it been for you, mate? You've been on the beat this week.
Good, yeah. Thursday we're recording this. Got in Monday. Just been soaking it up. Me and Bilal hit the town Tuesday night for a little exhibition. A little bit of electronic music, didn't we, Bilal? It's good times. We're having a good time.
Well, hold on. Let's. Can you guys? I had no idea what any of this was. I saw some stuff about NYC NFT on Twitter. I still have no idea what went down. Celia, you might want to stop listening right now. Wait. All right. So what happened? Because I literally still don't know. I know this was like 5 days ago or 4 days ago. What went down?
So it's a conference put on. I think it's at Margaritaville in Times Square is where the actual conference is supposed to be taking place. But it's like a South by Southwest type vibe, right? There's an official conference with speakers, and you could have applied to be a speaker, and a lot of people representing different companies went and gave talks, and then around the city, there's all of this other stuff going on. So there's NFT projects that are bringing their communities together for the first time because they've all, been launched in COVID or whatever, and it hasn't been a physical meetup. There's parties, there's, people meeting up I've met up with people who I've never seen their face before, been going
anonymous people, yeah.
Cartoon picture.
So how is that? Because I know you went to Miami for the Bitcoin conference, and presumably, you've seen those people's faces, but never met in person. How big of a gap was it to have never seen these people's faces and only like their Bored Ape or their CryptoPunk, and then met them in person? Like, how big of a disconnect was it?
I got it totally wrong. I think everyone has you have a preconceived assumption of what somebody's going to be like when you meet them through DMs or whatever, and I think. Yeah, I got it wrong for the most part.
I bet, Jack, one thing you didn't get wrong was that it was a 99% chance it was a man, right? If anything. Because...
we need to talk about this. Was this a running joke that there's 98% male at NFT NYC? So hold on a second. If NFT NYC was like a civilization, it's just not going to survive, right? Biologically, it's incapable of surviving.
True. It's still early adopters,
Actually,
mate.
you know what? That's not true, because Jurassic Park, you remember, in Jurassic Park, some of the dinosaurs, they only had female, but they found a way. You remember that?
That's not science advice, mate. It's very 2021 of you, but fair enough. But no, I will say that was one of the kind of things that when me and Jack were together, we, were like talking about like the Soho House in the metaverse idea, right? Like this cool place where there's artists and creative people, which I think is happening in its own way, right? But then when you translate that to real life or like in person, it's a very different experience, obviously, right? So, and this is not to like shit on it. I think it's really cool what's happening. But my opinion, it was not feeling like Soho House. It was more like the frat house meets like, you're like a bunch of dudes basically. But really, go on.
Let me ask, where are the females?
What do you mean? At home, probably.
Okay. Well, here, I'm asking just a more philosophical question. I understand.
In the space in general?
Yes.
Well, I think this is probably a deep anthropological hole to go down here. It's like the hoarding, the collecting mentality.
Also, don't get us canceled, man.
I'll try my best. But I think they're like the type of people that spend 8 hours a day on Discord and scrolling through OpenSea, and the meme that we posted of the dude at the wedding looking through the OpenSea listing page. I think there's kind of there's an anthropological reason why there's an attraction to this space, and the majority of people, like when you think of like video game culture, at least I think the type of art and the type of like jumping off points for NFTs captures a very specific generation of people, both like aesthetically and like the behavior and the places they hang out on the internet. So it's all kind of like, it's not as many younger people either. It's like, I would say late 20s, early 30s, and beyond that a little bit is the majority of people. I think that has a lot to do with like how much it costs to get involved in some of these like premium communities. Like a lot of people you have to work and have resources to join. And like World of Warcraft, all of the communities that like launched, I think I heard someone make the comparison of like these, Vitalik's reason for starting Ethereum, something to do with some World of Warcraft.
His warlocks, so the Vitalik founding myth of Ethereum was that he used to play World of Warcraft, and one day Activision Blizzard, the company that owns World of Warcraft, just took away his warlock's powers. And he's just like, hold on a second. I played 30 hours to get my warlock up to this level. Like, you can't just, this centralized authority can't just take away this power. And that's what I believe the exact blog post wording was, the evils of centralization. That's what he learned, the evils.
Right.
Although later he did say that was a bit of a joke, but I don't know. There's always a grain of truth.
I was going to say there's also two sides of it. Like the very, very, like certain communities are like represented very differently than others. Like there are some that are like art first or music first or like personality first that attract a different like group of people. But in general, I think it's like video game, Discord, like deep in the
male dominant
world it's just attracts more men than women. Maybe that changes, or like maybe the like magnet for the project itself changes over time, but that's not, I don't think that's indicative of every single community, but as a general trend, like you go on Twitter and there's a few women who did attend that said the best thing about being a NFT New York is there's no queues for the bathroom. There's no other event where.
All right, so hold on. There's a flip. So you guys went to, what was the banger event?
So I only went with one because Jack was actually getting his work kind of displayed there, right? Jack exhibited.
It was at like a concert hall in Midtown. Cascade, Destructo played sets, and then Pac, Nest Graphics, Too Much Lag, and myself had like displays in the lobby behind the, before you go into the music venue, just looping some work.
And you're still feeling the effects of that night because it looks like you're ready to go down for the count, right? Is this correct? Or has it been nonstop?
Well, I think Jack's been here all week,
man.
So
long week.
All right, so to summarize, NYC NFT or whatever it's called was
NFT NYC. Well, I was going to add, Trung, real quick, is like a lot of people are comparing it to South by Southwest in the early days, which is quite cool. Like I didn't go in 2008, but I kind of followed it from afar. I was like a student in London following like Kevin Rose and like Gary Vee, like posting all this stuff back in the day. And I saw a picture of them from last night. Kevin Rose, the OG, the founder of Dig, and Gary Vee, obviously he's got V friends.
Were they together?
They were together and they're like kind of boys still. And they're both really into NFTs, obviously. And I saw Gary Vee was wearing his Tumblr hoodie, which I was like, that is such a sick throwback because like he was probably wearing it there. Obviously, that was one of his big angel investment wins, I think, as well. But that early, like there are some similarities. It's very different and new in its own way because like the early South by Southwest, but when I say early, I'm saying from the tech side. I'm sure it's been going on way before then, before like Web 2.0 vibes. But it was just, even when I had gone, it was just like, you technically sign up for the event, but all the best stuff is like the informal parties. You're getting invited and you're just, meeting people, and like it's one place where so many people coming in at once. And I think now NFT NYC, on the flip side of the negative side, I was saying, that was definitely happening. All these anonymous people coming together, like people you've been speaking to on the internet for ages. We even had a guy who listened to the podcast came and said hello as well, which is cool. So it's just like that, like bringing that cluster of the internet together in real life is obviously amazing. And especially after the last year that we've all been through. And it does feel like, there's something bubbling up there. It's going to be very different to South by Southwest, but it has that like early energy to it, which is kind of cool.
Well, Bilal, you live in New York, and Jack used to live there. Just a quick question. Didn't mean to cut you off. Happens all the time. So when the New York Yankees win the World Series, there's like a vibe, right? or like when a war hero comes home, there's like a vibe with the ticker tape parade. How close was this to that vibe?
That might be a little exaggeration. The closest thing I can remember is when Biden won the presidency, because that was
okay. So there's like an energy.
People,
okay.
Well, like I literally woke up to beeping horns and stuff outside, and I went on my ghetto balcony, aka the fire escape. And I went outside and people were drinking champagne in the middle of the street. So that was the closest I got to
so
it.
there was an energy.
Oh, there was a buzz, yeah. And it was kind of cold. And that day seemed to like all of a sudden be super nice. So everyone was out kind of like just to celebrate. Obviously, it's a blue state. And everyone was happy.
Do we have any special shout outs for our Twitter friends that you met for the first time? Who in the Twitter squad was there that you guys all met?
Well, Jack, you had a bunch of people that came and joined, right? You already know them. They're kind of like friends by this point.
The guy, I think Cole was the guy we met, Bilal, at the event venue.
Cole Calfee.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cole
I just
Calfee.
met Danny Miranda in Times Square.
Oh, sick! No way. All right.
I did a little hat. I brought a bunch of hats with me, and just tweeted out, if you can find me in Times Square, free hat. So,
that's sick.
Just
did
met
anyone come?
Yeah. Just gave a few away. I met a bunch of kids that
sick.
We did this project like 2 weeks ago, sponsoring people's flight and accommodation to come, like young students.
Was that you and
Rick
Burton as well, right?
Rick Burton, man, he was doing it, and then I just contributed by making an NFT. I think we sponsored 11 people's trips.
Oh, and, amazing!
That's so sick, man.
Down there, just soaking it up, man. It's cool. It's good energy. Like, I think the overall takeaway is like a lot of people like digital native communities, like adapting to the real world is really interesting. Like challenge for people, and I think Bilal and I talked about this. Is like there's a huge opportunity for people who work in event organization and like do the in-person thing all the time to get into this space, in the same way that crypto is, creating opportunity for things outside of Discord channels and web development, things of that nature. As it gets more of a pop culture thing, everybody's going to start interacting with it. So yeah, it's cool to see it come together, and I imagine it'll have a trajectory like a South by Southwest, right? Where the first one is like, I think this might even be the second or third one, but it's like this is the first one where it's big enough where you'd see it trending on Twitter outside of your circle. Like Times Square, there's people sponsoring billboards, putting collections up and like rotating through.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of like apes and even toads and like just in Times Square, which is kind of cool. And Gary Vee's event last night, I saw there was like a line around the block. He did like old school South by Southwest style, just be like, there's a secret party tonight. And then at 11 p.m. he pings out location.
Classic.
And there's a line around the block, man. I was like, man, like he knows what he's doing, man. I think
Jeremy, don't mess around, bro.
Yeah. I think he's doing a lot of solid stuff there, man. So anyway, it's been fun. Jack, is there anything else that you're doing? Because you're only here one more day, I think, right?
Just just a few dinners and go to a few project parties and stuff. And working, man, networking. It's been like massively inspiring to meet people because this space hasn't been around that long. What people have accomplished in such a ridiculously short period of time, and how people have pivoted. So you hear someone's story and they're like, yeah, 2 years ago I was doing this. And then, I'm here to throw an event for this project that I launched 3 months ago that now has 2,000 people supporting it, 3,000 people supporting it. It's like, it's pretty impressive to see this stuff come together in person. It's been a quality trip.
Let me add one point here. You mentioned, Bilal, the opportunity for someone to combine the events, or was that Jack that mentioned it? One of you guys mentioned it. Microsoft Enterprise Metaverse, people. We didn't get a chance to include it last week, but
that was after our last episode on Metaverse, right?
Let's just touch on it quickly. Yeah, we called it. Oh, did we call it?
Yeah, we called the we basically predicted that this is going to become a meme, that every company, like even remotely related to the space, is just going to start spamming this keyword, basically, right? Metaverse, it's like earnings calls. I think there's even like algorithmic trading that happens based on what CEOs say, right? So it's like if person X doesn't talk about Metaverse, then their market cap's getting hammered. Like maybe a few years ago it was like AI or machine learning or some other like abstract term that, you know, nobody can really agree on the definition of, but everyone's like, yeah, it's the future, definitely. So you have to start saying it. So I'm sure it'll get progressively mentioned by less and less relevant businesses and contexts, like over time. It's a weird thing. It's like, there's no definition for it, and you could even argue that it exists now, right? So I'm kind of cautious when you hear people just jump on the term, and it's very convenient that this is like 2 weeks after it's in headline press, and now the frequency of it just.
Well, what I will say is that we never actually mentioned we touched on Microsoft's efforts, but like they're a very credible player to make this happen, though, right? Because they just have the most insane distribution, and like if your boss is telling you, "Hey, by the way, Accenture just linked up our 50,000 person company to Microsoft's Metaverse," you're gonna have to download that shit now and use it, right? Like Microsoft, because they're a wedge in the workplace, they can kind of force people to do it if they get the corporate uptake. And obviously Microsoft has destroyed so many even remotely cool things, but man, it's actually tough to bet against Satya, man. The guy's a monster.
Yeah, I wonder if like Teams is where they'll start, right? Like the just idea is like everyone's sitting in the conference room. I wonder, like, I find this whole subject pretty fascinating. It's like, is that going to unlock some new level of creativity? I think it's pretty,
I don't know if it will, man.
It's pretty bizarre. Like, I think maybe even a Zoom call is more intimate than like being a little cartoon in a fucking...
Yeah, have you guys used like, is it Spatial, I think it's called, or have you heard of this?
No.
I used it the first time this week for a company I work with. I jumped in and I didn't really know they were even going to do that. I think it's called Spatial, and my keyboard for some reason is not working, so I'll try to remember from my head. But you basically go in and you log in, and there's like a main room. It looks kind of like a 3D room, but I'm using it on my laptop, so it's not. I'm sure if you use VR, it would feel like you're in like some 3D place.
How do you spell that?
I think it's Spatial, SPATIAL or something like that. And if I still remember correctly, I think I met the guy who started it, if I'm not getting the companies confused, Anand X at google.com, because he was ex-Googler. His company got acquired by Google, and then I think he's spun out. Again, could be completely mixing this up, but I'm pretty sure it's him. And they basically, it's like a 3D conference room, and you drag your little picture on the thing, and then you've got a place in the room, so you're looking around. Like, if I'm honest, I didn't love it because I didn't have a VR headset, so it's kind of like, all right, what am I doing? But I think, yeah, mate, I guess the idea is you're kind of in this room together, and they're creating stuff in there like a whiteboard, and you know, I don't know, maybe there's a lot more stuff too. I didn't even use it properly. I was there for like 15 minutes. So, but yeah, I do think that kind of is in the same realm. My opinion is you don't know it's good until someone makes it good enough. You know, it's like the idea itself is like, yeah, cool, whatever. But it's like saying pictures on the internet. You can post pictures on the internet. You're like, yeah, cool. I did that in High Five and MySpace. Like, what's the big deal? And then Facebook comes and says, oh, here's unlimited photos and albums.
That's a great way.
Here's a news feed. Oh, and then Instagram, we've got these stupid little filters so you can not look terrible. You know what I mean? So until someone makes it elegant enough, you don't really know. So anyway.
We're sounding like boomers on this, man.
Yeah, we're definitely hitting the boomer level, mate.
I think Jay-Z invested in Spatial Labs. That's what the internet's telling me.
Oh, sick. All right. So real quick, because I know we already started talking about NFT NYC. Just to give people a heads up, we're going to be talking about the new mayor of New York, Mayor Adams, legend in the making, it seems like. We're going to talk a little bit about the next $1 trillion company, who that could be, what it looks like. And then we will get to Trung's Formula One in America. We didn't get to do Fun Fact Fan last week because we were down the hyperinflation rabbit hole. Jack, what's on your mind, mate?
I was just going to say on that last point, like maybe the thing that I'm missing is like Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite. Yeah. Like that, you know, the Satya Nadella, he said that those games, like the Microsoft suite of games, are metaverses. They own Minecraft, don't they?
Minecraft, yeah.
Or Roblox, one of them.
Minecraft.
So that to me is like, yeah, I'm kind of refuting my own point, where it's like the next generation of people who will enter. Man, if you combine this with what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, play to earn, it's like, does work look like work, or is like our companies designing like basically interactive gamified environments that somehow like we're talking about it from the perspective of people who are like on a different end of the adoption curve than people who are already living like this. They're just not working yet, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. Yeah. Because we're kind of seeing it from translating the real world or like physical world. We go and sit in a conference room and look at a whiteboard and like go through slides, and like just recreating that in digital world doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you, that's a good way to think about it.
Someone did a great thread. I was trying to get up on, I tweeted, remote jobs are just video games. And somebody did a legitimate like breakdown and took like little elements of video games that were like, yes, they're video games, but most people are doing a terrible job of actually gamifying them and creating engagement. So yeah, I think that's kind of like some companies, this is the same like idea as MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin and just stopping doing whatever else it is the hell they do, as like some company saying, right, everybody just start playing Axie Infinity. That's a more profitable endeavor than whatever like nonsense we're working on. So yeah, who knows, man? I think gaming is probably a better mental model to extrapolate from than trying to turn every meeting into because basically companies that hate. Right, companies that are having meetings not going to make it probably is a fair assumption, right? Like most of these companies that are blasting their way to $1 trillion market cap are like, you write a memo and you talk for 5 minutes or whatever it is. It's less of the like consulting company, and I've got plenty of experience in that space, sitting in a conference room, just bullshitting your way to some made up conclusion. It's a very different environment. So
sounds like a creative brief, mate.
Yeah.
Jack's got some PTSD, man. He's not in the condition to handle that right now.
No. We'll move on. But that, I think that's a good little mental model for thinking about it.
Definitely.
That's a great point on Microsoft. Yeah, let's hit up Eric Adams.
Yeah, so talking of NFT NYC, Mayor Adams, who's the new mayor of New York, we've kind of mentioned him before. I don't know that much about him, to be honest. I'm not allowed to vote here. I didn't vote, obviously, for that reason, but I probably would have voted for him if I could, just because he put a video out telling parents how to check for drugs in their kids' cupboard or their wardrobe. And I was like, what a G. That is amazing. So I was like, yeah, that's a guy I want policing.
What are the instructions? Open the cupboard and look.
I don't remember what it was now, but it was like, make sure you're looking in this pocket. This could be the hidden area or something like that.
The fifth pocket, right? In the jeans, always the sneaky one, or in the belt. Bro, let me drop you actually. You guys will laugh. When
top pocket on the flower shirt.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was growing up, obviously, I mean, we all partied in our high school days, but like there's like a leafy fern outside my house. So I'd stumble home at like 2 a.m, just blasted, right? Probably had like 20 drinks. And like, I'm so dumb at that time. And I'm not that much smarter now, but like the way I tried to hide the scent of alcohol was I literally jumped in the fern bush and started rolling around so I would smell like a tree.
Oh,
and
my
then
God,
I would go home in the house.
A tree.
Yeah. And then I'd shower and brush my teeth, but it didn't matter. You have 20 drinks.
That was the tell.
Smell like alcohol, right? Yeah, but exactly. My parents like, anytime you roll home at 2 a.m. smell like a tree, we fucking know you drink, you idiot. Like that's the cue. Anyways, that's Eric Adams G. Go on, Bilal.
We've been there, mate. Yeah. So Mayor Adams, the reason we're bringing it up, he just tweeted this. He said, "In New York, we always go big. So I'm going to take my first 3 paychecks in Bitcoin when I become mayor. NYC is going to be the center of the cryptocurrency industry and other fast-growing, innovative industries. Just wait." And all I'll say is, as someone who's lived here for a little bit of time, Jack's obviously spent even longer than I have before he moved away for a bit, is just out of all the states, right? Like New York is like the one that is not very crypto friendly, like the most, right? They don't give, I forgot what it is, bit license or something like that. But basically there's some basic stuff you just can't do here. And so, yeah, this is, I think, a really cool thing. I mean, the same way Mayor Francis in Miami has been so, like leaning into all of this, obviously with City Coin, Miami Coin, which we talked about on the podcast and had the guy on. So my hope is that, yeah, this could be a powerhouse for this world, right? Like the home of finance is in New York and London and Hong Kong and a few other places. But in America, it's New York. So I hope that they can actually, embrace it and it can become a powerhouse. But I don't know, what you guys reckon? Because I know, Jack, you met this dude as well, right, at one point?
Yeah, just shook hands with him at a fundraiser and got a picture.
We got to put that picture.
We gotta put that
picture. Yo, come on.
Yeah. I just
Let's find it.
Whispered. Yeah, I got it pulled up from our
there we go.
Here.
So tell us what happened. Did you just went in his ears like one word, 2 syllables?
He just said,
imagine a mountain goat. Yeah. That was pre-Sailor, man. So I probably didn't have that good of a frame.
Yeah, bro, hold on. We got to go through. Can you imagine if you had rolled up to Mr. Adams before he became mayor? It's like, he's police commissioner. It's like, listen, the entire history of humanity and nature is an unfair fight. Oh, yeah. If you're a goat and you're just standing on the grass,
Trun's been sailing.
That's incredible, man.
But I guess my response to it would be like, is the mayor of a city in a position to change the law that I would imagine is set at state level?
Right.
Like, isn't Francis Suarez in Florida like more politically aligned with the powers that, or that the idea of pro crypto, financial industry?
Yeah, good point.
Is much more aligned with the politics of, there's less friction above him in Florida is how I would probably describe it. So I'm curious if like these restrictions that are in place now are like Albany things and not something that's gonna. So maybe a marketing effort, but I wish him
either
the best.
way, it's like a positive signal. Yeah, and I think just for perception to have someone in his position, the same way Andrew Yang, when he was running, he was trying to be pro crypto, which kind of makes sense. It's more aligned with his background as well. But yeah, it's not like he's more center, right? Like I think he's a Democrat, but he's not like AOC all the way on the left. So I think given that, like there's probably a bit more balance for like the pro business, pro financial innovation or whatever.
I think it's like sick for the conversation in general too. It's like regardless of how. It's like a step. It's like a real high signal step, regardless.
Well, so you guys talked about, right? I mean, every episode we got to bring up the word meme. Is like this is just part of the meme. Is like the optics are incredible. And I mean, you guys are in New York or have lived in New York a long time. It's like the mayor is like, if you were to rank the titles of people in the United States politically, like mayor of New York is. What is, I don't know, probably top 15, top 20. And I mean, people knew Mayor Bloomberg probably even before they knew the governor of the state at the time, right? Although Bloomberg was also one of the richest people in the world. But I don't know, like Giuliani.
So will Eric Adams be soon enough. It depends how long he...
Just hold on to those 3 Bitcoin. Hold on tightly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man.
All right, anything else on that, boys? I think we can move on, but... yeah, I think either way.
One other thing is Suarez replied to the tweet. So it's like he said like basically welcome to the game, like our friendly competition. Let the friendly competition ensue, which is like just another amazing. Like really interesting evolution in politics that is outside of the this is the win and help win mentality. Much referenced friend Balaji coined on a different podcast, but the idea that this is a growing pie that we can all be a part of.
Well, it's like Patrick Stanley, the Citicoin, our Citicoin friend, which was on the pod, Bilal mentioned, is he talked about it as like one of the main mechanisms that he kept on referring to is like, all right, if a city's interested in flipping on Citicoin, it's like we're gonna need the mayor to basically flip it on, right? It's like that mayor level interaction on Twitter is like. That is where the game's being played, right?
Well, it's like the idea of the CEO of the city, right? Like that. I think he brought that up, and Balaji's talked about it. Startup cities is a kind of adjacent topic, but yeah, just I think we'll probably all net out to like more competition is good. It's gonna drive the conversation forward. Anyone who's holding themselves accountable in a public forum like Twitter, I'm all for that. Exactly. Obviously. Like, Trunks talked about it before, like these people doing dodgy stuff on the side aren't necessarily opening themselves up for scrutiny every day on the internet, right? So,
just to rewind, that was Adam Newman at WeWork, Elizabeth Holmes at Theranos. Both didn't have Twitter accounts. A third person actually who went, Aussie Media. Let's add him to the mix. Carlos Watson, zero Twitter presence. He's on there, tweets, no one responds. I've been talking about it's my Twitter theory, man. Every single example, we're still under 10, just adds to the theory.
yeah. Trung's on the Aussie hype again. Let's go. I remember that.
I could. I think you can frame this as like it's like iterating ideas in public. Like the Twitter is like a marketplace of ideas, and if you have that kind of distribution, and you can really gauge the response to something in the same way that we've talked about on like from a commercial perspective, people are used to thinking about this, but every massive political event in the last 10 years, starting with Obama, pioneering the use of social media in politics. Like there's a weird lull, right? Of like it seems crazy that it took until last year for someone like Suarez to take to Twitter and use that as a platform for like really changing the narrative about a city.
Yeah. I mean, Trump obviously in a much different way, but
right.
But to your point is like, Trump's already such a known quantity, right? Mayor Suarez literally came out of nowhere and just like, grab the bull by the horn, like Eric Adams holding Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right, boys, let's move on to the next topic, which is the next $1 trillion company. There's a couple I'm going to throw in the ring for this, and you guys tell me if there's anyone else we should think about. Coinbase we'll talk about in a second, because obviously we talk a lot about Web3 and crypto here. They had crazy results, which I'll summarize in a second. Stripe also, potentially I think it's the most valuable private company, in tech anyway. Talk of them going public whenever that's going to be. And obviously Square is already in that realm as well. Two things to call out. So Stripe just announced this. I think you guys might have seen my tweet. They're basically launching a physical card reader a la Square, right? Which is quite an interesting move. So Stripe really kind of going for their necks, which I like to see. And then Coinbase, their numbers just came out and they're pretty crazy. So Coinbase this is a tweet. I can't remember who posted this, but Coinbase is a $90 billion company growing revenues by 465% year over year, with profit margins of 44%. And the guy who wrote this said, folks, this doesn't happen. And the last thing he said is large financial competitors sat on the sidelines for so long, terrified of crypto. Now it's too late. Incredible story. So I'll throw this over to you guys. I mean, those are three,
I'll add two more. Let me add two more to the mix. Shopify and SpaceX. I can, those are the five. I'd also probably add just an old school Disney. It's about 300. And then you could go, I mean, we're probably talking the younger companies, but
this
you could also
like this is the business geek version of your top five starting picks, right?
Well, you could probably, and also just throw in Visa just because they're on cruise control to $1 trillion, which is the reality. Although they might be, I mean, these things are disrupting them. So yeah, let's start going through the case for all of them. I'll do a couple and then I'll flip it to you guys.
Go on, Trung, go for it.
I'll do the case for SpaceX. Obviously, people think that space is going to be $1 trillion economy when it comes to telecommunications. Starlink is actually the weapon X for SpaceX, right? They're going to launch 30,000 satellites into space and provide internet for the entire world. If you actually, I can't remember, I looked at the numbers. If you broke down their offering and it hit the other half of the world that's not internet, I mean, these guys, the run rate they're going to be on is like tens of billions of dollars, right? That's just on the internet business. So there's that. Square and Stripe payments is obviously just the shift to digital still isn't even remotely complete. And so I think Square is a $150 billion company. Stripe is a $250 billion company. The best case for both of those, or for Square, was from Cathie Wood. Obviously, ARK does some pretty aggressive numbers, but she was just saying basically like, how many wallet holders does Square have? And then what is the value of a wallet holder or a Cash App user on Square versus the dollar value that's assigned to a normal banking account? So a normal bank account might be assigned something like $2,000 to $3,000 lifetime value for an account, right? This is like all the financial products you'll use, all the fees you pay. But right now, those same digital accounts are valued on a per user basis at a fraction of that. So she's saying, what happens if you were to bring the Cash App user to the same valuation as of like a Wells Fargo user? That turns into $1 trillion company, right? And that doesn't include all the fucking crazy Jack Dorsey, maybe combined with Twitter and crypto plays he's got going on. Stripe, same stuff. Payments, massive industry, right? Hundreds of billions of dollars. It's not even like, it's literally just, a lot of people don't realize it's like the ACH stuff, like the debit payments that they work in that space. It's like 10 times a multiple of like a credit card industry. And so they keep playing that space, increase the GDP of the internet, they'll head to $1 trillion. Shopify, e-commerce is just absolutely massive. Even after the pandemic, we're still only 20% or 25% penetration e-commerce. That gets 50, 60%. Shopify is the alternative to Amazon, $1 trillion company. And then what was the last one?
You said Visa,
Coinbase.
I think.
Coinbase. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's do the tweet that kicked it off. Matt Hogan, who's the chief investment officer or CEO of BitInvest, I think. He says Coinbase is a $90 billion company growing at 465% per year with a 44% profit margin. And that is absolutely insane. A lot of that was because of the crazy uptick in crypto traders over the past year. And also Coinbase takes a ridiculous rip right now on transactions, right?
Yeah,
it's like
their fees are pretty high, yeah.
So if that goes down a bit, they're going to probably the margins are not going to be nearly as nice. But the last thing I'll say about them is and I think you guys have talked me into believing fully the crypto thesis, is if the crypto thesis is, Bitcoin headed to 10 trillion, Ethereum headed to maybe even more, it's like Coinbase is it, right? That's the interface, and there's a $1 trillion company. So what do you guys think about that bullet point analysis on these ones?
You kind of just alluded to it, but if you change the definition of company, then Ethereum can take that place on the mantle as well. And then one other, I have no idea what this business is worth. Maybe you know something, Trung, but TikTok.
Oh yeah, ByteDance is worth $450 billion, and I think ByteDance made $40 billion last year. So if you gave them like 15 to 20 times revenue, they're already $1 trillion. If they go public, that's probably a $700-800 billion company. You're right. That's right there. That's private.
So maybe for the purpose of this, maybe we hone into the payment ones because I feel like there's so many there.
Yeah.
But like if you were saying, because it's quite interesting to think about the different strategy with Square, Coinbase, and Stripe. I'd say like because they all got their own like core competency, but then they're kind of expanding across the board, right? Like Square started with the physical stuff, then they did Cash App, and they did the POS. Like they've got so many parts to it. Coinbase obviously starts as a crypto exchange, but is going to basically become potentially like a bank account for many people in the future, with like the products they're trying to do with Earn and that sort of stuff. And then Stripe starts with online payments, but now is expanding into the others. So I'm curious, like, do you guys have an opinion out of those three if you were picking one?
I'll let me tick through some insane stats about Stripe for you guys. So this is from Alex Tabarak, who runs the Marginal Revolution blog. He's an economist along with Tyler Cowen. They both are George Mason University. So here's some insane numbers about Stripe and the industry they play in. Okay, so the payments market a year is a $100 trillion business. That's how much volume happens in payments. So this is literally the epitome of what happens if we capture 1% of this market, right? Like this is like the epitome of that kind of meme, of an investment meme. So this is what's crazy. Credit cards, $7 trillion, and you get 2% of those transactions, which is what's happening. That's a $140 billion industry. However, if you take 0.5%, which is what the debit market plays in, of $100 trillion, you're already like 2 to 3 times bigger than the credit market, right? So that's just an idea of how big the space that Stripe plays in. And the internet hasn't even shifted to online yet. So like they're just in Stripe's just kind of in cruise control in just the biggest industry possible. And whereas Square is much more like they're trying to do a lot of, they're trying to be a financial super app. So you trade with them. Maybe you'll do insurance products. You send money to and from your friends, and then they'll just start taking rips of all those little things. I think they're going to eventually have to plug into like this kind of payment side. I'm sure that they have stuff in the works, but like that's just a total unlock. What's interesting about Shopify that we actually mentioned was Shopify has a very tight relationship with Stripe. And they actually own 2% of Stripe as a company. But as Jack always alludes to, the distribution is what's so important, right? So Shopify is the face of, the future of e-commerce outside of Amazon. And it's kind of in their interest to, they have a Shop Pay product, which is powered by Stripe. But what if they were to just be like, you know what? There's so much money at stake here. Maybe we should run with it. So, and Coinbase, obviously, crypto everything. NFTs we talked about, they got 4 million signups on just their beta NFT product.
Yeah, crazy.
And they're doing lending products. And I think I think you nailed it, Bilal. Like each of these three have totally kind of different things. They'll end up encroaching on each other's turf. Like we mentioned, Stripe was looking at hiring crypto people, but it's a good point. They are in very different ways attacking finance.
How do you think about Coinbase versus FTX?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because isn't FTX like sat across way more assets than Coinbase? Even the institutional products from FTX are like way more expansive than Coinbase.
I think you nailed it. I think that's the huge difference between them. And Bilal actually was the one that put me onto the the Best podcast with SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. But in that podcast, he's basically explaining what was going on versus Coinbase. And FTX from the beginning, and we discussed this in the episode, is very targeted at professionals, right? Like really hardcore crypto traders. And the other thing that they offer, which Coinbase doesn't, because to do derivatives, you have to be much more regulated, which is why FTX is all over, wherever they are globally, Bahamas, Hong Kong. SBF said that for a standard financial product, the volume of derivatives is something like 10 times the underlying. So let's say that, just total hypothetically, let's say whatever, Tesla trades $1 billion of the underlying stock a day. It's way more than that. But like the derivative equivalent would be 10 billion. And he's basically saying like the reason why FTX was able to grow so fast is they were providing derivatives on top of crypto, right? So booming trading market, and they're basically the go-to place to do derivatives on top of crypto. And Coinbase can't really do that right now because the regulatory headache. But so you know that part of it, right, Jack? It's like professional, institutional, FTX is much more in that space. But the retail is why they're getting crushed on retail. I think they have a tenth, maybe a smaller portion of the retail user base as Coinbase, which is why they're spending so much money on advertising. Yeah. And that's exactly, and the way that SBF described it in that podcast with Patrick O'Shaughnessy in the Invest Like the Best podcast, he's like, the reason we're going after this route is because a professional trader, they don't care about the FTX brand, like as in they care about the brand, but they more care like they're looking at the guts of it. Okay, am I getting the margin? Am I getting the execution time? Am I getting all this? Like those are the most important things to them, right? And like they know that they use the product 2-3 hours a day, but like a retail trader that might buy crypto once or twice a year, like Fiat Fan here, is like you literally just want to be like Coca-Cola, right? Like that moment that they want to buy some crypto or think of it, like, oh, I gotta go buy some crypto because I saw it on this fucking TV show, is like, they're like, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's Coinbase, right?
Yeah, right now, still, especially in the West, right? Like,
well, Bilal, you understand the comment brand advertising versus direct response, right? Yeah. You should talk through this. It's like, how important is brand advertising for that particular mission?
And I'm sure Jack with his background as well. But I think that's what, if you look at, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but so these numbers might be completely butchered, but let's just say it was like $600 billion of advertising dollars in the world. I think it was like 300-400 of those, so like 80%, let's say, were in brand dollars. This is when I looked like many years ago.
Explain what that means.
The reason is because, there's direct response, which is, if you think of a marketing funnel, there's the top end, which is awareness. And you get to the middle, it's like consideration. This is simplified. And at the bottom is some form of conversion or purchase, right? You might have heard of ADA is the full definition of it. But so traditionally, if you look at like Google advertising, people thought of like at the bottom of the funnel. Someone's putting their hand up saying, I want to buy a red pair of Adidas shoes. Show me that right now. You're not, but that idea of buying it happened way before. It was because you watched a TV commercial of the athlete, right? And then for Nike, they're Ronaldinho kicking a ball through the airport. And throughout your whole life, those stories you've heard were the brand moments that gave you a certain perception of a brand. So that's what I think Coca-Cola is sugar water for billions of people to drink. So at that scale, you just want to get impressions, right? Like eyeballs, keep pushing it in people's faces, do fun stories like the Budweiser ads. And then, like you said, that FTX institutional investor, they're looking at, what's the liquidity? Is it reliable? What's the speed like? All that stuff, which me and you don't care that much about because we're buying a little bit on like a Robinhood style app. So yeah, that's how I'd like try to summarize it. It's just the broad awareness where that moment where someone's about to make a decision, you want them to think of you, happens way before than like the Google search in the example I used.
And the other component to this, and I think this was today, SBF tweeted about their user onboarding flow is not it's good. Terrible. So you have to put your address
in. He said that.
Yeah, he tweeted about it. He said it's like hubristic, like to think that we shouldn't have fixed this earlier because you have to enter your address 3 or 4 times. As like a retail trader, just like, what am I doing? And that's like, design as edge, which companies like Square, Apple,
Robinhood,
all of the big beasts are like putting so much energy into cleaning up the UX of this stuff. And the FTXs of the world that are appealing to the more technical traders, or like you're willing to put up with a bit of a clunkier experience if you're trading size, right? And you're saving a huge amount of money. But these other apps, I think, are also recruiting talent from, really B2C software companies that think about UX in a much more comprehensive way. So design is like
that's the edge in a lot of these cases, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's like if you think of your bank back in the day, your bank you chose because for multiple reasons, but you wanted to go inside and feel like it was safe and all that stuff. Now our bank is in our pocket. We're like, you don't go into a bank unless you really need to, right? So like their interface, their store is like the app, and like it's surprising how terrible so many of the apps are. And then same with this. Right, like I literally dropped off that funnel I just said for FTX. I had to go verify my identity. I tried doing it and it didn't work. And I was like, all right, well, I already got 4 different exchanges. I was just trying to see what it worked like.
Oh, like literally, like man, use case, man. Tweet SBF, man. What's up, brother?
Dude, you got to come on the
he's
pod
just recognized it. Yeah, we got to get him on. And like there's another, like the switching cost in traditional finance is just so
oh my god,
to even think about it. Like I don't know if this is an appropriate thing to say or we're going to get sued for saying this, but I was with HSBC for a long time, and it's like every single digital interaction I had with that company was diabolical.
So
and
clunky,
like,
right?
Celia has like Capital One or Chase, and like they're just investing more money in UX. Clearly, they have talent.
But you won't switch because you don't want to deal with it.
Just can't be bothered. So like 10 years, I'm just like, why am
moving.
Yeah, it's like with there's a great show called Peep Show, UK sitcom, and is like this guy's trying to get his drawer open, and he's like, for fuck's sake, you can hear his like the voice in his head. He's like, for God's sake, every time, why don't I get this fucking thing fixed? And then it opens, and he's like, it always opens eventually. You just keep doing that for years and years and years and years and years. It's so dumb. But now
that monologue is that literally how you feel on
it's incredible. And you just do it every time. You're like, I can't be bothered switching. But that's the thing. Some of these like I think Cash App is just ludicrously clean, the sign up flow for that. I have a bank account with Cash App, and it probably took me like 5 minutes, maybe not even, right? It was like I didn't even realize I had a bank account. It was like a debit card showed up in the post. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I signed up for this. Versus a bank where it's like sit down with a bank manager and like paperwork. It's just NGMI stuff, boys.
Well, actually, you just brought up something there about Square, and I don't remember again the number off the top of my head, but that Kathy Wood thing that you mentioned earlier, Trung, like that, I remember in the ARC research or whatever, they said, one, if you took the number of users they have and you basically increased the lifetime value of each user, they would be worth X amount. But also how much cheaper it was for them to acquire customers, because they were basically creating a Venmo style thing where you pay, do peer-to-peer payments, and they had this little incentive, $10, $15 to invite your friends. And at that level, you're not thinking, oh, I'm inviting my friend to a future bank. You just say, oh, I need to give you $12 for this pad thai. And
well, that's a cultural cachet of like the hip hop community, or like, man, Aaron Rodgers giving away $1 million in Bitcoin.
It's crazy. So it's quite interesting. I'll just say really quickly my summary of what I think out of the three: Square, Stripe, Coinbase. I own two of those, and the other one is not a public company, so I would own that if I could. I don't know the numbers.
Not
investment advice, definitely not. But that's my just disclosure. The Stripe, like I don't know the valuations, like who's winning right now. So that's obviously accurate answer would include looking at that. But let's just say they're all doing pretty well. To me, what you described before, Stripe feels like they're just on a rampage. Like they've got crazy talent,
dude.
And I love the way you described the Spotify front end. As that keeps growing, they're going to keep growing as well. And there's less risk,
Shopify,
right?
Shopify.
Sorry, it's Shopify, not Spotify. and then I love, crypto world, obviously, and Coinbase has killed it in their earnings. But if we, have a downturn like we've talked about on a previous podcast,
FUD Bilal,
that's gonna mess up their numbers, obviously. So I don't know. I'd say the surest bet for me is Stripe, just because they're like monsters, but also because they're private, there's less pressure, right? Like I don't know what's really happening behind the scenes. I just assume they're killing it because there's this story told about these two Irish dudes.
Dude, how crazy is it that Elon and Peter Thiel were both angel seed investors in Stripe? Just absolutely outrageous. I think Thiel owns a 1 or 2% of the company. It's just fucking wild. Probably guessing
in his Roth IRA. Yeah. All right, that's episode like 15 or something. If you don't get a reference, guys. All right, anything else, Jack? Did you have anything else on that, mate?
I thought of something, but it's gone, mate. My memory is pretty.
Jackson,
4 days of Lash coming in. All right,
man,
cool.
that was good. That was a good chat.
That was great chat.
Oh, one thing I do remember was you said Spotify, and there was a partnership announced, Shopify and Spotify, where there's going to be like merch integration. I think in app through like it's just going to every like B2C platform is going to have to battle for the most fair monetization option for creators or contributors to their platform. So I don't know. I can't imagine. I just cannot empathize with somebody who's buying merch through Spotify. I just never would do that personally, but I guess it happens enough for it to justify doing this. To your point, I think Stripe, because it has like the rails at a much deeper level than these like B2C companies are building infrastructure for like coffee shops and stuff. It's kind of a different vibe. Like if you're all the payment network of Shopify, how does Amazon process payments? I have no idea.
That's a great question, actually.
Maybe
that's a very good question.
I just assume they would have their own thing, but you never know. It might be one of those where it's all powered by a Stripe or someone, but it's all like white labeled. Obviously, it's just in the back end.
Yeah, no idea. So that would be whoever's doing that. Bet on them, not investment advice. I would bet on them. I say. Yeah. But yeah, just also I love Stripe's like execution in like on a regulatory side too. Like all of the products that they're building on like register a company in 5 minutes, or tax compliance, all of that stuff just feels like gigabrain.
Keep it
execution.
Simple.
It's really cool.
Yeah, they take the pain away because it's kind of all boring for most people. So if they could just simplify that. All right. Yeah. So final vote for me was I'd probably say Stripe, but they're all probably killing it. you guys got, if you were picking one, just
Stripe.
to sum it up.
Yeah, Stripe. Man, Stripe, dude.
Jack, you got one, mate?
Yeah, it's a 3 of 3.
Unanimous decision. There you go. All right. No investment advice when they go public.
Yeah.
All right, boy, let's wrap this up with the fun fact fan. We got Formula One in America. I know, Trung, you've been digging into this world. So, yeah, what's going on? Because, look, let's assume someone listening to this doesn't know much about Formula One and why it's so popular or whatever. But, like, what's been happening? I know there was, like, a big Netflix thing, that documentary or something, right? Or series.
Yeah, I'll just do super quickly with, I'm hoping a lot of people have seen the Netflix Drive to Survive. So F1 is just an absolutely massive sport. It's massive global sport. And in North America, there's like a bias. Like, I mean, people don't really watch it or even attend it. And there was just a F1 race in Austin, like by the time people listen, it was 2 weeks ago. But what's so interesting about F1 is it's like the most watched individual sport outside of like the World Cup or like an Olympic event or these singular like Super Bowls. And everybody around the world is watching F1 events. And just North America has totally skipped F1. This is where like Netflix, the genius of Netflix comes in. F1 was acquired by Liberty Global, which is John Malone's company, like a cable giant, a genius of media. And he's like, he came in and says, we need to make F1 more appealing to the North American audience. Like one of the first things he did is like, F1 drivers now have to have their helmets off X amount of the time. We need to be able to see what these guys look like, right? He's like, what are the most popular sports? Which ones have the most social engagement? The basketball is right up there. Like LeBron James is a massive star, obviously, more so than even some top NFL players other than like Tom Brady, because they're always wearing their masks. And NFL is like a way bigger league than the NBA, but you don't have that social connection, right? I couldn't tell you what 20 guys in the NFL look like.
That's mental. That's like,
so,
yeah.
That's a good point, incredible. Right? So he's like, everybody, like if you're an F1 driver, you got to take your mask off now. People need to know what you look like. And then he started encouraging people to use their social more. It's like, you got to be more active on social, right? It's like people need to start knowing you as personalities. And then the Netflix show, The Drive to Survive, which have you guys watched it?
Not all of it. I've watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes,
it's incredible,
but it's amazingly well done. Yeah.
It's amazing. So it's like F1 agreed with Netflix to give them access to the pits. And and Netflix obviously dramatized everything. I mean,
I was just going to say, I used to work with a brand that competed in F1, and we'd come up with all these execution ideas, and like that's like the sales funnel for a lot of supercar brands is like people first come in contact with the brand when they're a kid, and then if they eventually make enough money to buy a $300,000 car, it's going to be the one that they fell in love with when they were a kid, right? Or a derivative of.
Yeah.
And F1 was always like incredibly tightly locked up with all of that information. Like they wouldn't give it to anyone. Like even the manufacturers can't use it outside of certain contexts and licensing and all of those things. So like whoever organized and orchestrated that collaboration just unlocked something absolutely massive.
Insane, dude, right? Absolutely insane. So the number is this: 50 million people watched Drive to Survive. And then, wait, you guys didn't go to the F1 event in Austin, right? A bunch of people went.
I've been like 3 years ago, but not this year. So it's pretty hype, yeah, but it wasn't nearly as big as it is now because of Netflix, and like everyone is into it. And NASCAR is just getting left in the dust now because now it sounds like F1's going to do a race next year in Miami, and they might add Las Vegas. And just as I mentioned from the top, it's like this sport globally is massive, right? And the story that was told to me by a buddy was in the 1990s, Michael Schumacher, one of the most successful athletes ever, right? Jack knows him really well. Billionaire a racer. He used to vacation in the United States in the 90s because nobody knew him. Like it'd be like the equivalent would be Michael Jordan at that time, who was probably his only financial peer, going to Germany or France, not being noticed. Impossible, right? Michael Jordan was the most popular athlete in the world. But Michael Schumacher, literally no one knew him in North America. So this is where the sport was 20 years ago. And Schumacher also has a documentary on Netflix, very sad. He got into a terrible ski accident like 5-6 years ago, basically a vegetable in a coma. But
isn't it crazy that he was incredibly dangerous sport every day for 20, 30 years. And like the craziness of like how he got injured was.
Here's the crazy thing. It's like, it wasn't like he was doing some crazy run. He was skiing back to his cottage. Like, but the thing I'll say about the documentaries, if you watch it, is like, I mean, the guy had the adrenaline juice, obviously. When he retired from F1 briefly, like they just showed video of him. He would take his wife to Dubai and they would do 30 airplane jumps a day. 30. Like, this is like, the dude needed the juice, right?
Yeah, the adrenaline,
Yeah, and but yeah, very sad. That was extremely sad. But having said that, the whole point of that was like one of the most wealthy, accomplished, famous athletes internationally would vacation in the United States, the biggest sports market in the world. So that's why this is such a big deal for F1. Bilal, I mentioned it briefly, but like the whole thing with John Malone coming in with Liberty Global, they buy F1. They're like, got to take your helmets off, got to be social, and it's working, right?
Well, actually, so Trunk, just to add to that, I don't know if you saw, I shared in the Telegram earlier, our boy Joe Pompliano, Pomp's brother, top 10 highest paid athletes of all time. So it's kind of timely for what we're talking about. Michael Schumacher, number 9, and this is inflation adjusted earnings, $1.13 billion.
Jeez.
Right, he's the only Formula One guy on there, right? Obviously, number 1, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, which is an old school 1954 guy in golf. Jack Nicklaus, also old school 1961 golf, right? I'm just sharing this really quickly because those three are all golf, where you're the individual. It's also kind of a rich sport, so they got the Rolex ads and everything like that. Yeah. Tennis has been also really good to people like Roger Federer, Nadal, etc. Roger Federer is number 10 on here. And obviously Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan. And then there's a couple people like Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, in a team sport, but the superstars of the game for the biggest sport in the world. Then it's Floyd Mayweather. But the reason I'm bringing this up is there's only one Formula One person here, and it was from Michael Schumacher 1991 when he turned pro. Yeah. Do you think now that they're opening up to the US market, you've got Lewis Hamilton, you got Lewis Hamilton, amazing for, like ads. He's got personality. Handsome guy, dating, superstars. Do you think now with the opening up to the American market and it growing 100%. Here that we're going to see more of those individuals rocket up?
Dude, Verstappen, is that the main guy? Like, I just know Verstappen from the Netflix show. That dude looks ready-made to be on that list, man. Like, young, intense, like dedicated to the craft. And no, I agree with your
if we do it 10 years from now, it's probably going to have a few more in there. I think football's still going to be up there. But that's interesting. And even with Michael Jordan, it's like he made the money through Jordan footwear, right? Like, that's where he made most of his money. So, it's interesting. I mean, anything to do with cars, it's the individual, it makes so much sense. They just hadn't been open to the US market before.
There's one more thing that I want to say about cars. And Jack, I love Jack's opinion on this because he's such a car guy. Is, when people, and we talked about it in a couple episodes ago, is like, hey, people complaining about the space race is like, what are all these billionaires doing spending all this money in space? Is like, so the amount of technology that's going to come out of the space race that has earthly and human applications is outrageous, right? And the example I'll use is F1, because McLaren, for example, has a research division, and their research division has licensed technology to like pharmaceutical companies to like do like toothpaste lines, right? Because they do so much data input from the race cars to just get all this data about the race cars, right? And they've learned how to analyze that information. So McLaren has a technology group which basically uses that information, and they've given it to like engine manufacturers and airplane manufacturers like Rolls-Royce, which makes the airplane engines, to tell them how to better read like the data that they get in. So like F1, it pushes vehicles harder than anything, pushes technology harder than anything in that transportation space. I'm just saying, man, when like to answer people is like the amount of technology, like externalities and exhaust you'll get from trying to go to space, they're going to have so many applications on Earth. Just look at F1, right? That's F1. That's just being as fast as you can on the road. I mean, these guys are trying to go to space and reuse rockets, right? All the material sciences and the physics involved, you're going to have so much technology benefits.
Love it, man. All right, boys. I think we're going to wrap it soon. We're going to have to kick out. But thanks for sharing that, mate. I think Formula One, it's definitely interesting, evolution. I'm going to watch that Netflix documentary. All right, boys. Anything else? Jack, I know you've had a long week, mate. And I'm still feeling like it's been a long week. And it's,
let's,
I haven't even done much.
I got one bit on F1. One thing I think is interesting and amazing that Netflix has accomplished this is like culture and my perception of where culture is going and what F1 is about would be contrasting ideas, right? Like the idea of firing up a V12 engine and just going as hard as you can around a track 80 times with the the narrative of or just the interest in combustion engine vehicles at a low for the most part, or at least in popular culture, you would assume that that's the case, right? Like I remember when I was working in the marketing departments of automotive manufacturers, it's like, how do we position ourselves as more attractive than Tesla? Because Tesla's what, people want to be seen driving as almost as a status symbol now, right? It's like, it signals that you are, right or wrong. That's a deep debate, that you are more climate conscious if you're driving an electric car. And there's an electric equivalent to F1. I think it's called what is it called? E something. I don't know. Formula E it's called. And it's it's just not the same. I've been to one of the races. It's they're silent. They're going around it's just not the same environment or deal. So I don't know. It just feels like it's a little narrative breaking for me. And I wonder what it will do to the consumption, to those trends in automotive over time.
That's fascinating.
Good point.
Do these brands have a resurgence? And all the top brands are still going to build electric cars, like McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari. They're all building either hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles. So it's kind of cool to see the relationship between how their production vehicles evolve as a product of what they're learning in the race world, and also what that does to interest in racing. I went to a little race day with Sam Parr, our founder of the Hustle. No, in Connecticut, probably 3 months ago or so, and did a race day and met the founder of this racing school. We just acquired a racing school, and they're seeing a bunch of interest pick up in their racing school, and they're actually getting into building go-karting facilities. That's, if you know any F1 driver's story, they started racing go-karts when they were 4 or 5, or that's how they get into it, in the same way that any athlete playing at that level.
I kind of want to get my kid wants to. I'm not going to say no. I might say no. My wife might say no.
Yeah. I mean, it's ruthless. I watched the first episode of that Netflix special. It's you watch their parents sitting in the tent watching them on the screen, doing 220 miles an hour around the corner. It's pretty mental, man.
It's savage,
It'll be there's also the European fashion that came out of F1 is kind of universally cringe. The
that red and white leather jacket.
Yeah, the racing shoes, and it just. But again, man, I'm not a fashionable dude, so I don't know how this stuff plays out. But NBA, NFL, what those guys wear really filters into culture fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and maybe that feedback loop is just getting tighter with the drivers now. They're not, the focus on them getting off the bus wearing their regular clothes versus always seeing them in the overalls. So it just feels like it's more taking a more lifestyle direction, and this guy that bought it gets that more than whoever was running it before. Or in the European market, it's there's plenty of people that want to walk around in racing jackets and pointed trainers.
I love that, man. I mean, dude, I definitely went through a mini phase where I tried it out. It didn't look well. That's when that was probably during my time of rolling in fern bushes. So
nice.
With your flower shirt and the fern bush. All right, boys. I thought we can call it here. But that was great, man. I think really good discussion on the earlier stuff as well. So let us know what you think of this in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on audio, you can click the link to go to YouTube and leave us a comment. and we reply to pretty much everyone there. We try to anyway.
Let's get some reviews on Apple. I can't believe I'm saying this, man. But let's get some reviews on Apple.
We haven't really asked people to do that. Yeah, do us a favor. Go on to Apple and write us a review on there as well. Make sure you subscribe to all those places. And as always, this is not investment advice, educational and entertainment purposes only. All vibes, no facts. And we will see you next week.